Good day, everybody, and welcome to 20 Minutes on Ice, powered by the Garage Door Sports Network. I'm your host, Ryan, and as always, in the co-host position is Nick. We've got a great show coming up for you, so let's get right to the opening face-off. Today on 20 Minutes, COVID continues to wreak havoc around the world, but especially in the NHL, where it has postponed a fair number of games, a large portion of games. We'll also be looking at the possibility of 2 drafts during the summer of 2022 that could be happening, and we'll get to our regular segments of Players of the Week, 3 hot, 3 not, and we'll fire up the randomizer. But joining me in all this is the largest collector of Baby Yoda merchandise in the northeastern region, Nick McVicker. Nick, how's it going this week?
It's going well, man. And honestly, I don't have Baby Yoda stuff. I have some big collections. I found out I have a coin collection. Didn't know I had that.
Interesting. Yes, my grandfather was a coin collector, so
that's where it came from.
It was a thing, right? It was a thing. But
well, apparently they were earmarked for me and my brother. We didn't know until my grandfather passed away, and now all of a sudden stuff's coming out. It's like, oh, this is written for me, and okay.
Now you got coins.
Sure.
Sweet.
I got coins now. Sure.
Heck of a 1947 penny I got there. Awesome. Lots going on in the hockey world. Just quickly touching on some of the reverse retro jerseys that were used this week. It seems like every night a team is using their reverse retro jersey.
Which is fine. Like, so they got to get them all in.
Yeah, so. And it's a moneymaker. But I mean, lots of teams wore them. Just some highlights. The Rangers wore their Lady Liberty jerseys. Flyers
still missing something for me.
It's a little plain, like almost like
it's just missing. It's like missing something. Like not much. Like they're pretty good. It's just missing something.
I agree. Flyers were in orange. A couple other teams wore the Blues. The Blues were in red. That was horrible. I didn't like that. Yeah, the Leafs. The Kings. Okay, the Kings look good. A lot of people were saying bring it in full time. But
as a third, absolutely. I have no problem with that.
As a third, great. Yeah, but I don't want to. I don't need them to be purple and gold. A lot of people want them to be purple and gold.
Well, I think for LA specifically, it's a purple and gold town. Like the Lakers are purple and gold. The Kings were purple and gold. Obviously, they were owned by the same person, and that's why they were purple and gold.
They changed.
But they have the history of being purple and gold. So some people want to go back to that. And I know silver, black, and white is the Gretzky color.
That's what I grew up with. But the reason why they were that is because the Raiders were in town at the time. And the whole black and silver thing was popular. So, anyways, I mean, the reverse retro jerseys are what they are, and we'll bring them up as they come out. How about
still the Leafs ones are awful. Have to make sure I say that every time they play in them. They are awful.
They are awful. St. Louis was awful too in the red. There's one other team that played in them, but it's not coming to mind right now.
Minnesota played in theirs.
They look good. The white and green with the yellow. It could be way worse, Nick.
It could be way worse.
Another one that set me off that I didn't like. Winnipeg wearing gray. Whatever. Like, what do we do?
The Tampa ones don't look that great either, honestly.
Oh, they were okay to me. I was okay with them.
They're fine, but they're not. I wouldn't get one.
Out of all 31, there's nothing that I'm gonna buy. Nothing that I'm going to buy.
I like the Colorado one. I might end up getting that at some point.
There you go. So
because I like the history and the new colors. Anyways.
All right. So the NWHL suspended their bubble. It's not happening.
Not a bubble.
Anymore.
It's not a bubble. It was never a bubble. It was a modified bubble.
Modified.
I don't know if you knew this.
I didn't know that.
They were allowed to have players come in as long as they tested negative when they were leaving where they were and tested negative when they landed. They were allowed to enter the bubble.
No.
Which makes it not a bubble.
Not a bubble. Yeah. So obviously there were issues. The Riveters
pulled out and then the rest of the league folded.
Just folded before the playoffs. That would have been huge for them. We talked about it last week. They would have been on NBC, but it's almost a disaster.
Next 3 games would have been on NBC.
Yeah. It's almost a disaster. That may be worst case scenario.
The last 2 weeks have pretty much buried the NWHL.
Yeah. And then the PW, what is it?
PWHPA.
Thank you. Signing deals. They're going to play in Madison Square Garden this month. And they're going to play in Toronto. So 2 huge hockey markets. And so they're making moves. And I mean, I just don't understand why the NHL refuses to back a women's league. That doesn't make sense to me.
No, and they should. And I think after the pandemic and fans are allowed back in the stands, when the NHL is back to like normal business,
Whenever
I guess we'll say when they're making like normal money, because at gates and stuff like that, they will. And I think that's just the next step. But the problem is that the growth of women's sports has also sort of coincided with the pandemic, right? Like, we weren't talking about the NWHL at this point last year, you and me. That wasn't a conversation we were having. It should have been, but that's a whole nother issue. We weren't talking about the NWSL for soccer. We weren't talking about the WNBA, but the pandemic allowed people to see these leagues for what they were. And the WNBA and the NWSL did a great job capitalizing on it. And the NWHL, unfortunately, looks like they did not, because they didn't handle it properly.
It was a 2-week situation, 3-week, whatever it was, 2 to 3 weeks. Just why couldn't everyone just, put the game before themselves for 3 weeks?
No, but it was the league's fault, because they were allowing players to come in, and that was the problem. It wasn't that necessarily the players were catching COVID or anything. It was the people who were coming in were possibly bringing it in. So, like, there's so many issues with that. Just have a bubble.
Yeah.
Why are you bringing players in? You set a roster for 3 weeks, unless half the team gets injured, which none of them were getting injured consistently. I think there was only like 5 injuries that I saw in games. Why are you letting people come into your bubble? Why, Ryan? Why?
It doesn't make any sense. But hey, there's going to be a big update. Let's get to the Barks and Hubie tracker, because there was
you're never going to get this right. It's Barks and Hubie watch.
Sorry, I'm tracking them. You're watching them. I mean, we're keeping an eye on them this year. But this stems from Nick took my words the wrong way, and I said Jonathan Huberdeau is a better player than Alexander Barkov. They're both excellent players, but Huberdeau is the superstar to me. And apparently that means I said Barkov is trash. So in that vein, Nick, go ahead and update us. Jonathan Huberdeau, Alexander Barkov.
Yeah, so the Florida Panthers only played 2 games this week. I don't know how the schedule works, but they've only played 2 games this week since our last update. And in those 2 games, both guys had good games. I mean, Huberdeau obviously had the phenomenal game, the loss in overtime where he got a hat trick and 2 assists. Barkov only had 2 points in that game, but then Barkov came back the next game and got 2 points himself. So they each had 4 and 5 points respectively. If we're looking at the season, Huberdeau, 12 points, 4 goals in 8 games, and Barkov, no slouch himself. Hold on, I just want to make sure I get it right. He's got 11 points with 4 goals in 8 games. So they're neck and neck. This is going to be a fun watch the entire season. And hopefully, you know what? Hopefully this brings some attention north of the border to 2 players who don't get enough credit, I think, in Canada for their playing ability. And hopefully we can bring a little bit more to the Cats.
If Huberdeau was in Montreal, Philly, New York, something like that, people would be talking about him. Toronto. I mean, this guy would be showing up.
If he's in Toronto, they talk about everybody in Toronto. So I shouldn't say Toronto.
The biggest story in Toronto is 4th liner Wayne Simmons breaking his hand this week. So anyone in Toronto is
hold on. The Jason Spencer hat trick is the biggest story in Toronto this week. Still 4th line, but
lots of bottom 6 news going on in Toronto after they win 8 of 10. That's what people want to talk about, bottom 6. But as far as Florida goes, I mean, they got 2 superstars, so hopefully they can pull off.
They have 3. Ekblad.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, we can get into that later, but that's kind of a polarizing situation. There are anti-Ekblad people, and I am a pro-Ekblad people.
Okay, but if you and me are talking right now, we say Ekblad is a superstar defenseman.
Top 2 defenseman on most teams, yep.
Yeah. So I have no problem saying that they have 3 superstars.
All right. Well, Nick, we got to get into games being postponed, as well as lots of other stuff going on the show today. So let's get right to it. As of our recording, there's been about 200 games scheduled in the NHL. And approximately,
you were about to say 200 games postponed. I'm like, wow, really?
Well, approximately 15% of those games have been postponed due to COVID. Now, we were expecting this. And I would say,
maybe not this fast, but yes, we were expecting it.
Yeah, but the NBA kind of had this situation where they all came at once. And the MLB, I can't remember if in their season last year.
The MLB was actually pretty good.
They were pretty good.
They had a couple teams that were really messed up. So like the Florida Marlins and the Cardinals both got pretty messed up.
And it happened at the same time, right? It was
they happened about a week apart. So Florida went down and then they had like 7 games canceled, and then like a week and a half to 2 weeks later, the Cardinals caught it.
Right. So
even though they weren't playing each other.
Right. So everyone, I mean, it happens in a group, and everyone starts wondering. I remember baseball when it happened. Is it time to shut down the season? Has this gone too far? Happened in the NBA. It's happening in the NHL. And it seems like the solution is rapid testing for COVID. Now they're doing tests, and it's more expensive. I forget where the report came from, but it's about $8 to $10 million more expensive for the NHL to pivot on this, which they're going to if they want their season to survive here. But I would expect more games to be postponed. That's just the season it is. Are we at the point where we have to look at, is this too much? Do we cancel the season, or have we gone through enough of this? Do we have the experience to press on?
If you're asking me personally, I think we're getting pretty close to having the need to cut the season. And I'm not like, I don't want to play with people's health. So obviously I'm not the right person to ask when it comes to risk management. Because for me, if someone has a risk of having breathing problems the rest of their lives, I'm saying, yeah, we probably shouldn't be playing. But I know that we're getting close to a point where they might have to say, hey, we need to take 2 weeks off as a league. Like that could be something that comes up. Like, not necessarily shut down the season, because I don't think they're going to shut down the season, but they might look at it and be like, okay, for example, Saturday this weekend, 4 out of 10 games were postponed.
Yep.
And sorry, it was actually 4 out of 9, because they moved a game from end of March to this weekend between St. Louis and Arizona, because Colorado was supposed to play St. Louis, and obviously Colorado's games were postponed. So they moved other games to try to fill holes. So it was actually 4 out of 9 games. When you're losing about half the games a day, that's a problem. Today, as well, 3 out of 7 or 3 out of 8 were postponed. Like, when you're starting to build those up, that becomes a worry, because, okay, yes, you can move games from later in the season into those holes for teams that are still playing, and I get that, and that's fine. But if you're missing so many games, that should be an indication, like, okay, maybe we need to reassess and retool to figure out what's going to happen. And it sounds like the NHL is. A Friday, they implemented new protocols and everything, and that's fine, and that's all well and good. But
they were a little, I mean, they're doing what they can. They're a little suspect. I mean, and one of the protocols is air purifiers on the bench, and from what I've seen, only Toronto has them visible behind the benches. I mean, someone probably paid to have their big machine back there, you know, and it's probably LG or something like that. But yeah,
well, if it has no advertising, they might not have paid.
Who knows? But that's something you can do, right? Sell the advertising on the air
for sure.
But a rich team like Toronto, I believe they instantly were able to access rapid tests, and so they're doing that now. Eventually, you got to think that's got to become league wide, right? You can't have teams go into games when there's several players who are going to test positive.
Yeah, and that's a big thing across all these leagues. Like the NBA, we saw it last week in the Toronto game. Kevin Durant was not allowed to start the game because he was waiting for results from the test. Then started playing, and then partway through the third quarter had to be pulled from the game because he tested positive. So first of all, they didn't get the result back, and they let him play.
Yeah, and then they threw him.
He just wasn't allowed to start. And then you pull him after he has already played against everybody on both, or with everybody on both teams.
Yeah.
That's a problem. So now, hockey's a little bit different because they're not physically touching the puck necessarily. Basketball, you're physically touching the ball.
Yeah.
A little bit different. You can't be having questions going into a game on whether or not a player has tested positive or negative. You cannot be waiting for results. That's just not okay.
If you're waiting for results, you don't play. That should just be, and you don't play until the positive comes in. You want to hold a roster?
No, until the negative.
Pardon me. Yeah, I misspoke. Until the negative. Yeah,
you want the negative.
You're positive. Get out there. What? But I mean, okay. Let's look at this honestly, though. There's been 0% of the games postponed in the North Division, the Canadian Division.
Yep.
Are those players doing a better job monitoring themselves, or is it the situation of the two countries and how they handle the virus?
I think it comes down to the cities themselves and the protocols that are in the city. Because think about it, 2 out of the Canadian, or well, more than 2. Like I know Ontario is in a full lockdown, so both Ottawa and Toronto, when they're at home, they can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
like there's nowhere to go when you're here. I know Edmonton Alberta at one point was in a full lockdown as well. I know BC was trending towards a full lockdown. I don't know if they actually got into a full lockdown. So if the case is that those 3 places were in partial or full lockdowns, that's 5 out of the 8 teams. That's 7 teams because I can't count.
Okay, now considering that, and it's clearly successful. I mean, there is a large sample size now, right? 15% of NHL games, all US-based teams, postponing. 0% from Canada. Clearly, there's a formula that works
correlation
at this point. Yeah, at this point. So, how much of that then has to be put on the players for not properly policing themselves? I mean, pros always talk about putting the team before self. Well, when they're away from the rink, they're not thinking about that, and there's a slight, you get a bit of a black mark if you end up in that COVID protocol list.
Yeah, but at the same time, they could be doing everything right, but their families might not be, right? Or someone who they happen to be in contact with through something, or maybe the trainers' families aren't 100%, right? There's so many different variables that could come into play where it might not be the players themselves that are putting them in a situation. And I'm giving the players a huge benefit of the doubt on this one because I truly do think they want the season to go on. And most of the guys who have been caught with positive tests have been tested negative a couple days later or the next day. So it was a false positive for most of them. So I think for the most part, the players are doing their best to try to stay within the protocols and try to stay within the restrictions. But it's hard because there's so many variables that go into an NHL season, and we're just looking at part of them. We're not seeing the full thing, and we're not seeing what's happening with their families. We're not seeing what's happening outside of the rink. So it's hard to say what's actually causing it. I think it comes down to the restrictions of the cities and for the spread to occur because there's so many different variables that go into play. Whereas in Ontario, no one's doing anything. The only people that these guys are coming in contact with are their families and the staff at the arena. And those guys are just coming in contact with their families and the other staff at the arena, just because that's just the restrictions. There's nothing else to say to that.
Well, there's a formula that works, but I'll relate it to this. Okay, on a face-off, let's say a small piece of tape on a player's stick is peeling off. They don't want to play with that stick. And most people would think, what are you doing? It's a small piece of tape. That is not going to have any effect. And they would come back at you with, there is so much money on the line here based on their performance that they can't chance it,
right,
with a piece. So the same attitude should be taken outside of the rink. There is so much money on the line here during these games. Like as a player, I'm making so much money. We have to be careful. So family, we're going to do everything within this house as far as sanitizing, hand washing, minimal contact because the season's only 5 months long. There's so much on the line here that as much care as a player would take with their equipment needs to be done with their life at home. And that's what I think.
And I agree, but most of these guys have kids, right? Most of these kids are still going to school in most of these places. So it might really not be their fault as much as they try. They could be doing everything right, but one minor slip up that isn't necessarily their fault could cost their team just because, right? It's so many different things that go into it. So I'm saying not necessarily blame the players, but there has to be something that they can do. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is a full lockdown for NHL families. Do you know how hard that would be to institute?
No, that's where the players have to come in and kind of you can't tell your family, hey, stop doing things because for me, right? That's a very selfish thought. But there has to be a bigger effort on some of the players' parts, not all.
And I agree with that, and that's fine.
To flatten the curve if we want to use that. So we will be coming right back looking at the possibility of 2 drafts in 2022 coming right up.
Hey everyone, this is Irfan Manji from Touchline Thoughts. We are an all-soccer podcast hosted by yours truly with guests every episode. We provide news, analysis, and opinions every episode as well. Touchline Thoughts is powered by the Garage Door Sports Network, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcatcher. Cheers.
We're back. 20 minutes on ice. Nick, the summer of 2022, there is the possibility of 2 NHL entry drafts, essentially back-to-back. This was reported by Darren Dreger of TSN. After he reported it a couple days later, he was told to kind of, whoa, pump the brakes. This isn't official, but it's definitely.
Well, he never said it was official.
No,
I don't get why people.
He said people are looking at it, and essentially the idea was, whoa, slow down, because maybe they're not looking at it in a hard manner, but it certainly makes sense. And the way Darren Dreger reported it, all the GMs want this because they are not able to watch Canadian junior players right now, all the prospects that they may want to draft.
Yeah, and I've been talking to a few people about this. My father and, of course, Kyle from the Betting House Pod extensively on this. And I can kind of see both sides of the conversation that's going on between everybody, and it's actually pretty interesting. But
so why would they hold it this year? Like, at this point, I don't see why, unless even if the CHL can get something together. It sounds like WHL may play. I don't see the OHL playing.
They won't. The OHL's done. They've already.
Yeah, the Q isn't going to get anything going.
The Q
again.
tried.
They tried. They definitely tried. But so I don't see why there should be a draft this year.
Don't know why? Because you have 2 or 3 years of scouting on the players in this draft.
Yeah, but you haven't.
Like no one is a rookie in the OHL or in the CHL system that is eligible for the draft. That's not how it works.
Exactly.
They've all played at least 2 to 3 years. So you have all the scouting. I get that some players, sorry, totally hit my mic. I get that some players stand out in their draft year and they move themselves up boards. But for the most part, you're not going to have a guy who is like a 20, 30, 40 point person all of a sudden break out into a 90 to 100 point player in their draft year. It doesn't happen very often. And when it does, they usually end up regressing to the mean when they go to the next level. So I understand why you would want to just have the draft as normal, because those players get another year of experience at either the pro level for the guys coming over from Europe. They can play at the AHL, or you get some stability for the guys who are drafted who end up going back to junior. It's more of a stability thing at that point. So I would think as a player, I kind of would want the draft to still happen. I know I'm not playing necessarily to boost my thing, but if you're a top 3 round talent out of a 7-round draft, you're still getting drafted. Like, there's no issue there.
The top players definitely want a draft to happen this year so that they can play in the 2021-22 season. But,
right, and the bottom, the 6th and 7th round guys who might be on the fringe, well, they'll probably still be on the fringe the next year because most of them get a second chance. So it's not necessarily the biggest issue in my head. Now, in my opinion, yeah, it would be great for them to put 2 drafts back to back, because then, yes, some of the CHL players will be able to get their feet ready to go heading into their first possibly their first NHL season, as opposed to coming in completely cold, which will no doubt hurt them in their first training camp. There's no way around that, just because you haven't played competitive hockey in a year, unless you've played in the World Juniors this year, and how many players were available that were actually playing CHL in the World Juniors? Like 3?
Even that will wear off. Like that's.
I know, but that's, like, I'm just saying, like, that would be a year and a half for most of them.
I would say these players, they're still teenagers, right? They're still developing physically, mentally, emotionally. Yeah. It doesn't matter who is good. You need to see that development so you can project what kind of development you're going to get at the NHL level. And you've taken a whole year away. So I just think it's eerie. You're going to set a lot of teams back by asking them to draft this year. And some teams
I mean, this is what they're paid for, the scouts. This is what you need to be paid for. You need to be paying attention not just to the players who are eligible for the draft, but to the guys who are younger. That's the whole point of advanced scouting.
I'm just going to be devil's advocate here.
Yeah, that's fine. That's the whole point of this conversation.
The scouts would come back saying, yes, that is what we're paid for when we're giving 2 or 3 years of junior play time to analyze these players. They would say I can't complete my job by missing a full season of watching this player. I can
But it's also even across the board though. So this is just this really, if they do have a draft this year, all it will do is it will show which scouting departments are better at advanced scouting than others. So because they've been looking ahead and they've been planning ahead.
Yeah, but I can understand what you're saying there, Nick. And that would be early identification. And, it'd be teams like Detroit back in the day who was able to do that. And LA was good at it leading up to their Stanley Cup
Colorado's
runs there,
been successful recently.
Yes.
You can see teams like Florida when it comes to goaltending. They've been able to early identify some players. That's why they have the 2 World Junior finalist goaltenders in their system.
Now we'll see where that goes because Toronto.
No, but they look like they have the ability, right? Is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah,
so it looks like they're on the right track. And there's some teams that do a very, very good job of that. Colorado has. I'm only using them as an example because look at the defense depth that they've built through the draft over the last 4 years. Yes, I know. I think Timmins and Byram were the 2 that came over in the Nashville trade, but then you have Graves and Makar.
They're stacked. They're stacked. Now, if they do push back the draft, and that's what I'm in favor of, it would certainly be an interesting situation. A couple things to look at here. Strategy of the teams would change, but also at the same time, the 16-year-olds playing junior, if the 18-year-olds went back into junior because there's no draft coming up, the 16-year-olds now get pushed back. Not as much playing time. So in 2 years, we may not have a strong draft class because they lost.
Or we'll have a super strong draft class because they're competing against more 18-year-olds.
Also possible. So that's a long run outlook there.
That's a way down the road thought.
But definitely something if you're a 16-year-old and you're like, oh, I got caught in that year where the 18-year-olds went back to junior, and that's tough. But as far as strategy for the NHL teams, and the one thing I'm thinking of is the first round picks, and you can kind of lay out maybe where the first 3 guys are going into, I don't know if they do it in both drafts in one weekend or however they handle that.
I think I heard it was one weekend after.
That would make sense.
The 2021 draft, which should be held this summer, would be the first weekend, and the 2022 draft would be a week later.
Yeah. So, but going into it, you got whatever pick in the 21 draft and whatever pick in the 22 draft. If they're early picks, in a sense, who's going to fall where.
Yeah, like Detroit.
That could affect you.
You're going to have the first overall in both.
That would be hilarious. But you could then, your 2 players. Do I want these 2 players, or is it now worth trading that first overall pick in the 22 draft because I know who I'm getting in the 21 draft and I know what I can get? I mean, the trades that are available during the 21 draft, if they're not made there, are also available the following weekend in the 22 draft. So lots of strategy to think about.
Yeah, and I was talking to Kyle, and I think he was the one who mentioned this. If you don't want anybody in the 2021 draft wholeheartedly and you have the first overall pick and you desperately want somebody in the 2022 draft, you're making a trade out of that first overall pick spot.
Absolutely, and that would be a privilege that you wouldn't have in a normal. You'd be taking a chance. Whereas
you're taking a much bigger risk in a normal year to trade out of the first overall pick for a potential top 3 pick next year because you don't know where everyone's going to finish.
Yeah, and if they push the draft, then it's
if a player gets hurt.
Yeah, if they push the draft, it's more of a certain thing. Oh, I know who I'm getting next weekend, so this is fine. So I think as far as trades, it may liven things up, or I may be blind to something. It may shut things down as far as trades go. But it would certainly make for an entertaining situation. And if they could push it back a little, I know they like to have it right after the Stanley Cup final. If they could push it back a little, you would have more eyes on the NHL in the summer when you don't necessarily. Like one of the first ever leagues to hold drafts back-to-back weekends. They could make it, Super July or so,
could also really mess up rookie scoring for 2021.
Oh man, it'd be like when the full season was lost because of the lockout, right? Ovechkin.
Yeah, but here's the beauty though. there's still potential for rookies next year if there is no draft.
Oh, yeah.
Guys who have been drafted that haven't played, there's still potential for them to make an impact as a rookie, but it would be a rookie class of like 25 players.
Yeah. Perhaps the Calder takes a hit next season to just have an incredible race 2 seasons from now. That would be
possible.
That would be pretty cool. So, given a percentage, Nick, how likely do you think this is to happen? Just right now, if you had to guess. 10% chance. See, I'm going 80% chance. The more
I don't think it's going to happen.
The more we talk it out, I think it benefits everyone to push it back, except for the players who want to be drafted this year.
Who are, the important people in the draft.
Oh, please. But yeah, I'm saying
don't please me, Ryan.
80%.
Don't please me.
80% chance this happens. But are you in favor of it, Nick? Do you want?
I'm indifferent. I don't really care. Like, I think both have benefits.
No, you cannot. No fence sitting. No indifferent.
But like, I really don't think that one is significantly better. Like, if there was an option that I thought was significantly better than the other one, I would jump on it. But I think there's benefits to both sides. I think you isolate which teams have great scouting departments if you do one this year, and I think there's going to be some very interesting draft and trades if you push it back. Like, I think there's benefits to both sides. So I really could care less at this point in time. It's a draft.
All right, you don't care, so you're choosing not to push it back there. I've made your decision for you. I'm in favor of pushing it back. We've talked it out here. I've processed it in my brain now, and so I'm saying push it back. So NHL, I know you're listening to me. Go ahead, push back the draft. Everything's fine now. So we will be right back with our players of the week. We're back. 20 minutes on ice. Ryan Haslett, Nick McVicker, and it is time for our players of the week. Nick, let's start off with player of the week, and I'll let you go first on this one.
Oh, you're so kind, letting me go first.
Go ahead. Take a shot at it.
What, you don't like when I say that?
You're up.
This week for me, I am going with JVR.
Wow. Okay.
That's a name that I didn't think I would ever say in a player of the week after he left Toronto. But he's played really well this week, man. 4 games. He has 9 points, tying Connor McDavid for the most points this week. And 2 goals, 7 assists. He's only playing 17 minutes of ice time, which is kind of crazy that he's been putting that many points up while averaging only 17 minutes.
He's slotted perfectly on the Flyers. Like,
he is.
Yeah, that's why he succeeds. He's just, and put him in front of the net. He's going to tip everything. Just throw him in front of the net. He's a big guy. Let him tip the puck. Just a really, really great around the net. Power play guy. I like JVR showing up. I loved him in Toronto. I mean,
he got a lot of flack in Toronto.
And unfortunately, I mean, and that was
it was the same with everybody on those teams. Though, like Tyler Bozak got a lot of flack, Kadri got a lot of flack, JVR got a lot of flack. Yeah. Guys didn't deserve that.
No, but that was a growing team that wasn't succeeding, so that's why.
Even Dion, I will give Dion Phaneuf credit. He did not deserve as much of the flack as he got. He deserved some of it, but he did not deserve as much crap as he got.
Probably, yeah. It's Toronto. That's everyone. So
yeah. And JVR would like to point out, only 2 of his points this week were on the power play. That means 7 even strength points, which hasn't been his bread and butter recently. And now he's coming back into his game, and he looks very good on Philly.
Yeah, absolutely. Love JVR. So my player of the week, David Pastrnak. He had the hat trick. I believe he also had an overtime winner. So
Pasta's back.
He is back in 3 games this past week, 7 points, 5 of those goals. Love the shooting percentage, 29.4%. Give Pastrnak the puck and just let him shoot whenever. You're going to get some goals. And of the 5 goals, 2 of them were on the power play, and you need your superstars and your team to capitalize on the power play. So that is just David Pastrnak doing positive things for the Boston Bruins, who are one of the top teams in the league. So he is my pick for player of the week. Let's go.
A good pick. It's a good pick.
David Pastrnak, Dunkin' Donuts man. I don't know if you saw his tweet. I think it must have been 2 or 3 weeks ago, but he actually has like a Dunkin' Donuts tracksuit, full-on tracksuit.
Of course he does.
Hoodie, and he's just sitting there in a beanbag chair with Dunkin' Donuts products. So that was perfect. Let's go to rookie of the week, Nick. Who do you got for your rookie of the week?
You go first. I went first for player. You go first for rookie.
Okay, I'm going to take the obvious choice here. I'm gonna steal your rookie of the week, unless you want to take him, and then I'll take my secondary guy.
No. You go ahead.
Okay, there was only one choice for me this week. That's Tim Stützle.
There was one choice for both of us.
Yeah.
But I'll come up with a second. Don't worry.
3 games played. Well, this is where I can take my backup. But 3 games played this week on an atrocious Ottawa Senators team. 2 goals, 4 points, averaging just under 16 minutes of ice time for a rookie. And one of his goals was a power play goal. So he was the standout rookie this week in a week where there were not a lot of standout rookies.
Yeah, no, he's definitely coming into his own in the NHL. It took him a few games to get his feet kind of figured out and to get the speed figured out, but pretty much since like week 2, he's been the only highlight really in Ottawa. Hey, they won a game this week. I mean, full credit to them. They're trying.
Way to go. They were awful in Edmonton. I don't know if you saw them in Edmonton, especially the 8-3 loss, and Hogberg started. Oh, yeah. And there was one Draisaitl goal, and he comes down the right wing. He's got no options. He is approaching with speed, but then he just throws it far side on net with a wrist shot, and Hogberg isn't anywhere near in position. Goes over his pad, past him into the net, and at that point you just knew this is bad. They lost the game 8-3. They do not look good. They were another team though, Ottawa, that wore their reverse retros this week that we talked about off top of the program. So,
yep, and I could not care less.
All right,
it sounds horrible, but I don't care. Like,
who was your rookie of the week, Nick?
Well, I had originally had Stützle, but I'm gonna flip, and I'm going with I'm gonna butcher this, but Philip Kurashev from Chicago. He also had 4 games this week, and he added 4 points. Including the game today where he got no points. 2 goals, 2 assists, playing for, as we mentioned, a bad Ottawa team. He was playing for a bad Chicago team.
Chicago's so bad this year. I have no clue who's playing for Chicago this year.
Well, the sad thing is they're not actually that bad because they're middle of their division, but that's a whole other issue.
They need to be worse because they're trying to rebuild.
Yeah, but they won 2 games this week. So
there you go.
What do I know, right?
I'm going to watch more Chicago, try and learn some players on their team because I am not familiar with that team.
That's 2 weeks for me that I've had Chicago players as my rookie of the week. So they're young.
They are, but
don't know if that helps. The problem they're young.
It's a different player each week. It's not like the same guy keeps popping
up.
Well,
Pius, my boy Pius had a couple points this week as well. He picked up 3 in 4 games. So I mean, they're trying. They're doing their part.
Let's see what they can do.
It's hard to. It's hard to lead a team as a rookie.
Yeah, and that team is just a jumble kind of young players right now trying to find their way. So we'll see where that goes. Goalie of the week. All right, Nick, I took your player for rookie of the week, so I will let you go first for goalie of the week.
Well, I already know we don't have the same goalie, so it's fine.
Go first.
And I'm going surprise route.
Okay, let's hear it.
When I said it, you were surprised earlier.
Yeah. This is actually, this caught me off guard. Go ahead.
I'm going Cal Peterson.
Yeah.
From LA.
0 wins.
He has 0 wins. That is a valid point, Brian.
But you made some good points countering that.
But he's only given up 2 goals 2 goals in both of those games. The other 3 goals in those games, empty net goals after he was pulled because they almost had a chance to win.
Yeah. He's
okay.
He's ready. He's getting ready to take over the net from Jonathan Quick.
Yep.
And don't let it happen this season. I mean, unless it naturally happens where he's winning, a majority of the games for you. But continue with kind of a 60-40 split. Maybe Cal takes the the 60 and Quick gets the 40. But next year, give him the ball.
Sorry, let me correct that. I was looking at the wrong game. So let me go through this one more time. He actually gave up 1 goal in the game that he started. They lost 3-1. And then he came in relief and gave up 2.
Still, and he looks phenomenal in the reverse retro jerseys, the purple reverse retro jerseys. He's got a reverse retro mask too. Yeah.
It's like Jake Odinger for the Stars when they put their city one, whatever their third is called,
the black and neon one.
Yeah, but his helmet, like his equipment together with the jersey looks phenomenal.
I saw the mask; it looks pretty good considering the jerseys, which are just awful. So,
but the reason that I picked Cal Peterson this week, and it really came down to this, was that he had a 184 goals against average with a 956 save percentage.
The 956
across 2 games.
Yeah, the 956 is tremendous, especially on a team like LA that isn't very good. They're giving up too many goals.
Isn't very good.
They're not. To put it nicely,
isn't very good is an understatement, Ryan.
So they did lose to the Ducks, who are actually middle of the pack. So good for the Ducks.
All the LA teams, all the California teams other than LA, have been decent this year. Yeah. Not good, but decent.
So my goalie of the week this week is Vasilevsky for Tampa Bay. 3 goals. He did not score any goals. 3 games.
That would be great.
3 games played, 3 wins, only 4 goals against. He has a great team in front of him, but he's also a great goalie. 947 save percentage, which is well above league average. So that's just, he's doing his job. Phenomenal stats for a great team that is looking to repeat and has a chance to repeat just based on their talent level. So it's kind of an easy win this week for Vasilevsky on that one. So let's get to 3 hot, 3 not, Nick. You're up for the 3 hottest teams in the NHL this week, and then I'll follow you with a downer note on the 3 not so hot teams. Go ahead.
What, you don't want to start?
I can start, definitely. So 3 not hot teams, the not teams this week. Vancouver. 0-4 this week. 2 losses to Montreal. As of recording, 2 losses to Toronto. By the time you'll hear this, they've already played that 3rd game against Toronto. We'll see how that goes. But
they'll lost to Toronto.
Just no defensive structure. They're just being ripped apart in the media. They're being ripped apart in Vancouver. Everyone wants the GM fired. There's not a lot of confidence in Travis Green, the coach. Just to sum up here, Vancouver was 0-4 during the week. In those 4 games, have only scored 9 goals total, 23 against.
Which is fine if you're good defensively.
Which they're not. 23 against during those 4 games. That's a team goals against average of 5.75. That's atrocious. So, and I believe they have 8 or 9 games this season where they've allowed 5 goals or more. Teams, Montreal and Toronto, just walked all over them this week.
And I think the best expression of how Vancouver's season is going is the face that Braden Holtby made after, I think it was the 5th goal in the game yesterday.
But
where he looked to the bench just kind of like bewildered, like he wanted to yell at somebody but didn't even know what to say. Like he wanted to say something but had no answer to what was going on. So he just looked dumbfounded. He
fires the puck off the right wing boards, goes past his defenseman who's covering the forechecker coming in. But unfortunately, it bounces off the boards and ends up right on the stick of Austin Matthews, who has no one near him whatsoever. Right. And Matthews walks right in and puts it in on Holtby. So that's a team thing. That's Holtby giving the puck away.
Well, no, it wasn't even after that goal. It was after one of the later goals that he just kind of looked to the bench. He was just like, I want to yell at somebody, but I can't even yell at anybody because everyone is screwing up.
I want to give up, but you guys really are shat in the bed tonight, guys. So
Ryan's using the S word.
Anyways, Vancouver, my number 1 not hot team this week.
Number 1? I thought you normally start at 3.
Well, I'm going down. Vancouver was so bad, I had to get that out of the way.
Okay,
LA's coming next. They were 0-3 this week, only scoring 6 goals in those 3 games, 12 against, so that's okay. Their PK not getting the job done, 71.4% this past week. They lost once to Anaheim, twice to Vegas. That might be excusable because it is Vegas, who's a great team. But LA kind of slotting in exactly where they're expected to be this year, 0-3 this week. And then my number 3 team, The Washington Capitals, 0-3 as well this week. And this is a team coming off their whole COVID protocols. They were missing their 4 Russians there, but they were 0-3 this week. They did have 9 goals for in those 3 games, so that's 3 per game on average. Usually if you score that, you can win, but they didn't win a single game, and they only allowed 16 goals in that time, so they just couldn't get over the hump this week. They were still 0-3, winless. They had a 22% on the power play, which is great. Perfect on the penalty kill this week, which is amazing, and you don't win a game. So they actually had a real schedule this week. 1 loss to Boston, 1 loss to the Rangers, 1 loss to Philly. So Washington had a regular schedule, and I guess they couldn't handle it or couldn't get over the hump, but they were 0-3, and those are my 3 not hot teams this week. Now, Nick, your 3 hot teams.
Okay, all 3 of my hot teams are from the normal Atlantic Division, which just doesn't exist this year. So
what's that? Yeah.
Just bear in mind that. But I'm going to start with a team that you just mentioned. It's the Boston Bruins, who started off the week with a win against Washington and carried that over with 2 wins against Philly, one of them being an OT, so take that as you will. But that's 3 wins against your closest competition in the division, in the East Division. That's huge. And to put that into perspective, they've also won 7 of their last 8 games, dating back all the way to that Islanders game in the beginning of the second week of the season. They've only lost 1 game since then, and it was an overtime or shootout loss to the Capitals last Saturday.
The Bruins are back. I mean, the Bruins are the Bruins.
They're there.
Again.
They are ready to go. They've found their game. Getting past the back is going to be a big boost. They're also getting contribution from guys that they weren't supposed to get contribution necessarily from. Guys like Nick Ritchie has really stepped up and become a huge second line player for them and a power play guy, which is insane to say because it's Nick Ritchie. But he's stepped up. The team has stepped up in the absence of Pasternak. Past is now back, and the Bruins look to be ready to go.
All right. Number 2, hot team.
Number 2, I am going with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you mentioned it already that you in your baseball hat. You mentioned it, though. They absolutely beat up on the lowly Vancouver Canucks this week. And they looked damn good doing it, other than the fact that they were wearing those god-awful reverse retro jerseys.
7-3 and 5-1 against the Canucks.
7-3 and 5-1, which is just ugly score lines.
Yeah.
And if you go back even further, the Leafs have been playing very well. They lost to Edmonton last weekend, but before that, they won 4 straight against 2 against Calgary and 2 against Edmonton, who are probably the 2 biggest competitors in the division outside of Montreal, who they really haven't played much yet this year.
Ironically. No, that's coming
outside
up.
of the first week.
Yep, that's coming up.
So that'll be a huge test for Toronto, but they look good. They're firing on every aspect of the game. Freddie's looking a little bit more steady.
Steady Freddie. You know what?
He's not fully steady yet, but he's getting closer.
The goals against for the Leafs. Oh my goodness, Matthews. I mean, they're the joke tweets about him going 50 and 50. It's not going to happen, but joke tweets. He's on fire.
It's possible the way he's playing, and the only reason I say that is because the way he's playing and the way Marner is playing. Because let's not forget, Marner's 3rd in the league in points right now, trailing only McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who at one point were like 9 or 10 points up on everybody.
Yeah,
he's bridged that gap. He's only like 3 or 4 points back now from McDavid in first. So that says a lot about where Marner is and where Matthews are playing at the level that they're playing at. And then you throw in the additions of guys like Jason Spezza and Jimmy Vesey, who looked very good on this Leaf team.
I thought he's tailed off here a little bit in the last little while.
I think he still looked good in games. He might not be putting up points, but he still looked good, which is something that you need on that 3rd line just to take a little bit of the pressure off Tavares' line and Matthews' line, because if you can get Kerfoot and Vesey and all those guys working well on that 3rd line, and then you get that 4th line of Spezza and Simmons putting points in on the power play, because logically that makes sense. Your fourth liners are your power play specialists.
Now, it does sound like Simmons is out, so they are losing a lot of that depth on the bottom six due to injury.
But they still have guys that have been playing, like Engvall, who will just step in and be another player on the line.
So we'll see where that goes. Who's your number 3 hot team, Nick?
No, my number 1.
Oh, okay. You've gone in reverse order.
I go reverse order because that's what we normally did. So I just went with reverse order.
Exciting. Who do you got as number 1 now?
Tampa.
Good
Tampa.
pick. Good pick any time of the season.
It's hard to say that. The crazy thing right now is that, hold on, I want to get this right. It's either 4 of the top 5 or all of the top 4 in the league. Yeah. 4 of the top 5 teams in the league right now are originally in the Atlantic Division.
That Atlantic Division: Boston, Toronto, Montreal, Tampa,
So
Florida.
that tells you a lot about the Atlantic Division and how competitive it is. And yes, I know that means Ottawa is in the Division too, and these top teams must just beat the crap out of Ottawa in a normal year.
And Detroit.
And Detroit?
Just beating up on, spend the season.
And Buffalo. If you want to throw Buffalo in there because they're Buffalo.
Spend the season beating up on Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo.
But this division would be unbelievably competitive this year, the way all 4 of these teams are playing. I wish I could have a top 4 where I include Montreal, but I can't. But Tampa has just run show the last week, and there's really no issues with their team.
No.
You mentioned Vasilevsky as your goalie of the league. Well, how about winning 3 games and only giving up 5 goals in those 3 games?
Yeah. Just they're such a good team. And no reason to believe that they won't be a cup contender.
Now, we do have to put a little bit of a note. They played Nashville and then 2 games against Detroit.
You know what? Yeah, okay, they're easy games, but you still got to win. Just win.
You do.
Right? You got to win. And if you lose against these teams, then you're wearing
Montreal.
You're wearing the goat horns, right? So you got to win. Exactly.
And, but you know what? Montreal came back and beat Ottawa after they lost to Ottawa. So.
They did, in a moral victory for Ottawa, and that's about as many victories as Ottawa's going to get this year.
There have been Ottawa games this year where they've looked really good and lost by 1 goal, and then there's been Ottawa games this year where I thought they were going to be good because they played good the game before, and they just forgot to show up to the rink.
How many wins is Ottawa at right now? 2 or 3? 2. Do they get over 12 this season?
If Vancouver keeps going the way they are, maybe.
If they take some from Vancouver, we'll see. I don't see Ottawa
in a 12 games is.
I mean, you're almost at the quarter mark, so they're on pace for 8 or 9 wins.
Yeah. I don't think they get to 12, but I think they'll be around 12, which would be roughly 25%.
That's a tough season. 12
Yeah, but they
wins.
expected it.
But still, I mean, these guys are professionals who have the burning desire to win.
Most of them are rookies.
All right. Well, we'll see where Ottawa ends up at the end.
Ottawa
of the year.
win tracker is the next thing we're tracking. Apparently,
the race to 12 is on. All right. Let's hit the randomizer and see what comes up this week. Here we go. Okay, this week we are playing the name game. This is kind of a 5 degrees of separation situation. It's a rapid fire game. We got to come up with names quickly. No stalling, no diddle-dallying around. So one of the hosts, it's going to be me, throws out a name there, a player. We'll start with the current player. And quickly, Nick has to come up with a player associated with that player and quickly explain why. And then I have to.
If there's explanation needed, you might not actually have to explain.
That's true. Yeah, sometimes there's explanation needed, but any stumble or any kind of delay or any kind of. I lost this game last time we played because I repeated a name. So anything like that, any hold up.
Well, you actually hadn't repeated it. You just were about to repeat, and then you caught yourself.
I couldn't think of anyone else, so it was the right thing to do to throw up the flag there. So
throw up.
I will start, and when you're ready to go, Nick, you can come up with any name. But we are going to start with someone who's come up a couple times in the podcast tonight. Wayne Simmons of the Toronto Maple Leafs is our first name that we're starting off with. Whenever you're ready, you go ahead, Nick.
All right, I'm going with someone else we mentioned in the podcast this week, JVR.
I will go with
teammate.
Luke Shen. They were traded for each other. Luke Shen.
I like that one. I'm going to go Braden Shen, his brother.
Very good. Okay, I'll go his teammate, Ryan O'Reilly.
And we're going to bring it back to the old Toronto boys, Tyler Bozak.
If we're going Toronto boys, they played together Nazem Kadri.
Nice.
Yep.
I'm going to go Nate McKinnon.
Nate McKinnon. Okay, I'll go Jonathan Drouin, teammates with the Halifax Mooseheads.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Victor Mete.
Ooh, Victor Mete. Oh,
Montreal.
he wants to trade just like Sam Bennett does.
Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but I'll allow it. I am going with one of the hottest goaltenders to not be winning games sometimes, and that's Jacob Markstrom.
How about his replacement, Braden Holtby, who gave his bench the death stare?
Well, not really a death stare, more of a very, very confused
Scrabble face.
stare.
Yeah.
Very, very confused stare is a better answer. I'm going with the grade 8, Alex Ovechkin.
Oh, they played together in guy who Dmitry Orlov, COVID buddy.
Sorry, am I allowed to laugh at that?
Yeah, that's the direct relation there. They both have COVID and they got it together.
That's an interesting connection. I'm gonna go with local boy Tommy Wilson.
Tommy Wilson,
TJ's favorite player.
All right, let's go Ryan Reeves. I guess his equivalent of some sort.
Man, your connections are real abstract this week.
You know what, Nick? I will give you that one. That's a bit.
No, it's fine.
You want to keep going? We can keep going.
I can keep going.
Ryan Reeves. I won't throw in the towel that quickly then.
Don't you worry. I'm going with the oft-mentioned and always loved Marc-Andre Fleury.
And
unless you're Pete DeBoer.
I'll go with Matt Murray, who replaced him in Pittsburgh.
And I'll go with Tristan Jarry, who has replaced Murray in Pittsburgh.
There's no one who. No, I'm gonna have to give you this one, Nick. I was trying to think of replacements. I could have gone with DeSmith. I can't even think of his first.
Casey DeSmith.
I wanted to call him Christian.
I had that
DeSmith,
one down too.
So.
I was ready for that one.
I wanted to call him Christian DeSmith. I knew it was DeSmith. So, look, you're pulling out the wins on the name game, Nick. We got to keep going with the name game.
And you're going super abstract. Mine are really logical. Like they play on the same team. They're brothers.
I think I'm overthinking this one. So
Tom Wilson to Ryan Reeves, like they're equivalent. What?
It was weak, and then when I couldn't think of the goalie name as well, so I had to give it up.
You could have gone on like Crosby after Jarry.
You
could have gone with anybody on Pittsburgh after Jarry, and you were so focused.
That's just throwing you a softball there, and you're just.
That's what I was doing.
Well,
I was just giving you softballs, and you were trying to go abstract.
I'll have to take it back when we do the trivia when that comes up on the randomizer. That brings an end to this 20 Minutes on Ice. Be sure to subscribe to the show and hit the like button on YouTube. Also subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when the shows come up. You can follow me on Twitter at Ryan_H16. Follow Nick at Nick McVicker. Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at 20 Minutes on Ice. You can head on over to garagedoorsports.com, find us under the shows tab, as well as all of the other great Garage Door Sports Network shows. We will be back next week with more exciting hockey news from the world of the NHL, international, junior, whatever comes up. Thank you for listening, everybody. Goodbye.